Because if you are doing a system design and you go through this whole process in a stepwise manner, you will wind up with a result that you can use an automated tool and hit the button and it will generate your code for you. And at least it gets you about 80% of the way there. Most of them aren't good enough to do the whole thing. They need some tweaking. But that's the reason for using UML. It's very structured from that standpoint. But it's unstructured from the standpoint of user interface, which is the part we're going to focus on. So a use case is constructed of these two pieces, the diagram and the scenario. Just like in the IDEF 0, you had the glossary, which is the word description, and the diagrams. You've got the word description and the diagrams here. And it takes both. So from a use case scenario standpoint, you've got a use case itself is a coherent set of functionality. Okay, so it is defines what the system is going to do. Now, for a whole system, or what's called a package, which you don't need to know, but that's what it's called, you might have a series of actors interacting with a number of use cases. Each of these ovals is called a use case. And it is a complete set of functionality. It represents a complete transaction or a mechanism of providing value to a customer. So, if this is an ATM, this use case would be withdraw money. This use case would be deposit money. So it's a whole unit that provides value. Okay? That's a concept that you have to work on. It is not a step. It's not a piece. And we're a little bit used to seeing the circles as being a piece of something. This is the whole piece, the whole thing.
Is it more of a process, a group of processes that we would interpret as being a step? So that if it's like deposit money, then it's all the steps that go into push the button, stick the money in, get a receipt.
Exactly.
Anything that has to do with that function.
Exactly. Yep. That's correct. So in this case, the use case name is become a member. Okay? So your goal is to enable the browser, enroll the browser as a new member. That is one of these circles. Become member. Okay? Now, there are also within here potentials for multiple flows. So, you would have, you might become a member, and that would interact with them. You might have an error code. Okay, that would be potentially called out of that. It's probably not going to interact directly with a user, but it's going to react through this becoming a member activity. And we'll get into some of this, but I'm trying to give you some ideas here.
Select condition else.
I'm sorry?
Select condition else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You can have alternate ways of doing it. You can come in through the browser. You can call on the phone. You can send it in through the mail. Those would be alternates. But then you can also have errors. And both of them need to be identified and represented. Okay? So the scenario itself then includes the series of steps. Okay? Once you get from there then, here's what your diagram would look like. Okay? So your diagram is become the member, but all of these other things that you could possibly do are also Once you are a member, okay, this person and that person might be exactly the same people at different times, or you doing different things. They might even be the same person as this person. They're indicated as different actors because they're playing different roles with the system at different times. These are not physical people. They're represented as people because that's intuitive. Okay? Yep.
Yeah, and then the previous slide, what do you mean by exceptions? Like just the errors, or like if the user enter any error?
Yeah, that would be an exception. And they use that rather than error, okay, because error is a type of an exception.
Yeah, so it's general.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. Yep. So your symbols are your little stick figures, okay, and that is an actor. They initiate the whole process. They perform some form of something that creates a trigger that starts these use cases working. The use case, which is the oval, and that is the action, and the connecting lines, which connect the two together. And they may connect use cases together, or they may connect users to use cases. Because a use case can call a use case. You can have a call event. So I've covered a lot of this. It represents a role. They exist outside of the system. If you go back to this previous slide, this blue box is your system. This would be the equivalent of your big concept box in an IDEF0. Okay? So they're outside of the system. They can be a system, a person, or a device. But they start the whole process going. Relationships, you're probably not going to get deeply into a lot of these relationships, but there are ways of defining different ways that things can happen. This is the most common. This is the one that people use most, and in fact, you know, probably the only one you're going to need. But this is a communicate. Okay? This is connecting the actor to the use case. The actor's doing something that's starting that use case rolling. Inside that, where I said that a use case can interact with another use case, and then you could have an include relationship. Okay, so in order to pay the student fees, you have to have enrolled in the course and you have to arrange the housing. So they're included in that use case. And it's always been counterintuitive to me. It seems like the arrow ought to go the other way. I just know in my brain that whatever way I think the arrow goes, make it go the other way. Because I don't quite think that direction. A generalization, you can have types of students. A part-time student is a student. A student is a generalization of a part-time student. That you can also have full-time students, which would be another. Student would be a generalization of part-time. And an extends. An extends is like once you have paid your student fees, then you get insurance. And again, the arrow goes backwards to me. But you're probably not going to use the last three, but know that they're there. And if you see a dotted arrow, it should have one of those terms on there that indicates the relationship. Okay? Yeah?
The part with the arrows and the include, is that, is there normally a different word that goes there, or is it just say include?
No, it says include.
Okay.
Yeah. It actually says,
Okay.
those are real labels. Yeah. And they mean something very specific to the folks who are doing the programming. Okay? This is when you're getting down into the dirty on how the system is going to function inside. So steps for creating the use case: review the business specifications. Know what you're trying to do. And the first piece of it is figure out where your system boundary is. What's in and what's out. That's not always as easy as it sounds. Identify who the actors are. and who